Welcome to the Big Fat Real Estate Checks podcast with Marco Kozlowski, where we help investors like you get the knowledge and skills you need to replace your JOB with passive cash flow for life.
Welcome to another hopefully exciting podcast. This is Marco Kozlowski, and this is Big Fat Real Estate Checks, and we've quickly become close to number one in podcasts, which is extremely exciting. Thank you so much to the listener, you who is downloading and listening to this and getting this information, and we really appreciate your kind feedback and your honest feedback, and we're really excited to give you as much content as possible. And the more reviews you leave, the better it is for everybody. And we want to give this information to as many humans as possible so you can quit your day job, quit things you hate doing, and start doing the things you absolutely love and have cash flowing real estate take care of you instead of you having to bust your ass doing what you do on a daily basis to never have the time to do things that you love, which is the whole point of this experience. And of course, I couldn't do this without my two compadres, Gabriel Araish from Montreal and Frank Galluccio from Toronto. And today we're going to be discussing taking over debt. This is something that seems almost like witchcraft and wizardry. It's Harry Potter shit, but it's really not. It's the art and skill that has mostly been lost among even real estate professionals on how to take over a debt subject to the existing mortgage, which is just taking over the property, owning the property, but the debt that's there staying in place. So we're going to discuss that. And if you're scratching your head wondering, well, how is it possible for me or for me to buy a property from someone else that has a mortgage, they leave, the mortgage that they had stays, and I own it, and the bank doesn't call the note due, which they could. But if you have the right structures in place, it's illegal. It's impossible. And that's what we're going to discuss today. It's going to be a strategy that is going to be extremely effective coming in the wave of pre-foreclosures and foreclosures that should happen, considering there are over 40 million people that have not made their mortgage payment at this time. And as people don't make their payments and people can't catch up because of the economic cycle that's coming up, creates pre-foreclosures and foreclosures. And if only half of those are not able to catch up, it's still 20 million plus. And in the great crash of 2008, there was 12.8 million. So it's still considerably more than what happened in the crash. And this was the best time to buy real estate. And it opened up another opportunity, which is available to us again. In fact, you could still do it today, but the opportunity is ripe like a peach, ready for the picking and on taking debt subject to the existing mortgage. And most people do not believe that every mortgage can be taken over, but it is absolutely true. If you know how, every single mortgage can be taken over. I didn't say assumed, I said taking over. So that's the topic. I hope you're excited about it, because I certainly am. Who wants to start the conversation?
I'll start it off. Thanks, Marco. It's Frank here. You know what? Before we met you, it is witchcraft. It is like the old calligraphy. Everyone, the older people with some gray on top know what calligraphy is, but the newer people don't. And it is lost because it hasn't been used. And I know when you first mentioned it, they're like, subject to. And I was like, subject to what? All right. So it's like a commandment or something like that. And then, to take over a debt, so taking over versus assume, I think 99% of the population don't know this even exists. The banksters did a very good job, putting this underneath the rug for many years, because the benefits that come with it. So I know when we first got started, my wife and I, and we were looking for subject to properties, and just that ability to take over an existing debt. And basically what you're doing is just you're leveraging. You're leveraging what's already there. So if there's already a debt there, the bank's getting paid. They're happy. So basically, if everyone knows, amortization, if you go onto Google and do amortization, when you get a new mortgage, they typically pay more in interest in the beginning. Then you pay a little bit more interest and principal in the middle, and then towards the end when it matures, you pay a lot more principal than you do interest. So they kind of put that under the rug very well for the average Joe Blow not to know about it. And it's a strategy that successful people in real estate use, which I was totally oblivious to. I didn't even know it was even on forms, and it is legal. You just have to know the right people.
And in fairness, I think most people don't know about this. And as for the banks, I think the issue that they have as well is that they've qualified the initial owner. They don't get to qualify, whoever takes the subject to loan, right? So that's sort of the bank side of it.
Let's start with the history as to why this even exists, number one, and why it's possible. So before the 80s or during the 80s, the interest rates were double digits, 18%. That was the prime rate was 18, 19%, which is massive. So imagine you go to a bank and you have an 18, 19% mortgage. You can get a 20% mortgage, which is almost usury at this point. In certain states, you can't even get a 20% interest rate. Some states are 18% max. Anyway, but the prime was super high, and so you're going to the bank to get a mortgage, and they're going to give you like a 19% interest rate, which is ridiculous. That I don't know who could ever afford that. And number two, the mortgage that was already in place that someone was already paying was at 8%. So do I want to get a new loan at 20%, or do I want to take over the existing loan that's there at 8%? Obviously, you want to take over the existing loan. And the banks created amortization schedules. As Frank was saying, an amortization schedule is heavy on the interest on the front end. There's 3 trimesters in a mortgage. The first trimester is mostly interest. The second is half and half. And the third is going to be all principal. Because the banks know every 5 to 7 years you're going to move. So they're going to make all their money on the front end. And if someone stays in the house and eventually they get it paid off, but you're paying your house many times over a 25-year period. It's really getting paid off over a long period of time. So you've got this mortgage that's there. Why not just step into it and just give the person money to walk out? And that's what was going on in the 80s. And there was no due on sale clause, meaning that as soon as the mortgage changes hands, there's no due on sale, which means the banks couldn't do anything about it. And they said, well, screw this. We're going to add a due on sale clause, meaning that as soon as there's a sale, the mortgage is due and payable. So they can foreclose on the property if there's a change of ownership. That's what the due on sale clause is. So this was happening in the 80s, and it was really hurting people. And politicians actually cared about people back then. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And there's a senator or a politician. I'm not sure if it's a senator or politician. I have to do my research out of Utah, and they created the Garn-St. Germain Act. And the Garn-St. Germain Act, which was initiated in 1986, is a federal law, and it basically says that if you put your property into a trust, it avoids the due on sale clause. It is a non-due on sale clause and action, or event, which means that if I own a property and I put it into a trust and the bank finds out it's put into a trust, there's a federal law that prohibits them from taking over from foreclosing. They can't take it over. Now they can ask for the trust documents to make sure that the owner is still the owner. That's completely acceptable, just to make sure that their interests are protected. But we have a solution for that. But if you put the property into a trust, a land trust specifically, it avoids a due on sale clause. And that's the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1986. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can Google that. And even on a HUD 1 settlement statement on line 203, I believe, it's subject to the existing financing or subject to the existing loans. So this is, and HUD 1 is a federal document. It's on the HUD, and most real estate agents don't even know that this is a possibility of doing things because, again, it's something that used to be done a lot in the 80s. And as banks become more aggressive in changing things the way they do things, they make a lot of money on origination fees, as Frank was saying, on points, on this, on that. And they want you to get a new loan because banks make most of their money on the front end.
First
beginning,
trimester.
right? The beginning of the mortgage. So exactly. So thank you, Gabriel. So the more loans they generate, the more the bank makes. So it's really a system to make the banks a lot of money. So the counterbalance to that is if you understand how to put a property into a land trust, and we're not going to get into the intricacies of a land trust. In fact, we can do that on another episode and walk through what a land trust is. But the power of this, as long as it's up to 4 units, I'm going to say this again, is if you have a apartment building and it's 5 units, a land trust has no value as far as putting the property into a land trust and avoiding the due on sale clause. You can still put things into a trust no matter how many units it is, but it's not going to avoid the due on sale clause. The only loophole is for 1 to 4 units on a land trust. So putting the property in a land trust allows you to, if it's done properly, avoid the due on sale clause, take over someone's mortgage, because once it's in a trust, you can actually control that trust. So if it's put in the Frank Galluccio trust, but I own that trust or I'm the beneficial interest of that trust, I can actually end up owning Frank's house and make payments on the house. If I stop making payments, it's going to get foreclosed on, which is terrible for Frank and terrible for me because I lose the property. And I don't have to qualify for the mortgage. So it's a really, really beautiful thing. And those are sort of the mechanics. Now, why is this important? Why are we talking about it now? Well, what do you think is going to be happening as the tidal wave of delinquencies continues, where 40-some million people have not made their mortgage or rent payment? That's going to trickle down into foreclosures or pre-foreclosures, which is going to trickle into the economy, not values coming down. And so, boys, how do we take advantage of this? I've done all the talking right now.
Well, do we want to give an example of
help me out here?
How someone would kind of do this on a high level basis? Where
Absolutely.
If we take 2008 for example, and this is what obviously we expect in the coming months, is that property values will come down. So someone who got into a property not long ago, say they bought a house for $150,000, they have $125,000 mortgage on it. It could be, or at least that's what happened in 2008, is that values dropped. So that house was now worth somewhere around $65,000, $75,000, but still had $125,000 mortgage. So now what we want to do is obviously, if we're looking at it just from a value standpoint, everybody's like, well, I'm never going to buy this. I can't buy that. I'm buying it for more than it's worth, or there's more debt on it. The seller will never sell it. So the solution is what? Well, using this Garn-St. Germain Act. Now, obviously, you're going to have to look at the cash flow side of this, and I'm not sure if we're going to get into the math right now, but ultimately, if you decide that this is a good deal for you and that you want to get into this property, then that property, if you're just going to take over the mortgage, because obviously, if it's worth $75, you're not going to give them any cash. It's going to be easier for you to get into the property just by servicing the debt. So doing that would require that property or that seller to put the property into a trust. And from there, you as the buyer could buy the trust, and then you become the beneficiary of that trust. So doing that will not trigger the due on sale clause, and then you can continue servicing the debt and eventually paying off that mortgage while making all the cash flow in the process. So that's how you would do it high level. Obviously, there's paperwork to be done. There's probably a little bit of an educational side for the seller to understand how we're doing this, why we're doing this. But the Garn-St. Germain Act does allow that up to 4 units again, not more than 4 units. But that's definitely one of the solutions. And that's something that's, in the next coming months is we're expecting some sort of tsunami that's going to be similar to 2008, if not worse. There's going to be tons and tons of these types of solution or debt takeovers.
So you might also be thinking, well, why would I take over a debt that the value is less than its value? Well, if the cash flow is there, let's say you have 3 tenants that are paying $1,000 a month each, and the mortgage payment is $1,000. So you're making $3,000 of gross revenue, and you're going to keep, let's call it $2,000. And your debt's $1,000, you're still making $1,000 a month. So even if the property's upside down, even if the value is lower than what the mortgage is, it's still cash flowing like crazy. And if you can get into that property with no money at all, where the seller just wants to bail, or I don't know, they want $5 or $6 grand up front because they don't want to wait. They only make $1,000 a month and they'd like to get 6 months and get the hell out of there because they're getting a divorce or they have medical issues or they're relocating or whatever their situation is. Here's some cash, get out of here. I don't know about you, but would you pay $6,000, $7,000 for $1,000 a month in revenue? All day long. I'd pay $10,000 for $1,000 a month in revenue. I'd get my money back in less than a year. So if the cash flow makes sense, you can take over debt and pay the seller to get the hell out of there. So we're not buying property anymore. We're actually buying cash flow. So not only do I look at values as whatever the values are. So if I'm buying a property I want to with cash or with asset-based lenders, I need to be at 30% off. But if I'm taking over debt, that matrix completely changes. And it's just an extra tool that you can use to be very effective in your real estate investing portfolio.
Yeah, I see this a little bit different than you, Gabe. I think yes, home values will go down or get adjusted, but I don't think it's going to be the slash that we've seen in 2008. What I'm starting to see, and I think we were texting each other on some deals, and I go, it's starting, is some homeowners that missed a payment or two. Let's take your example. Someone bought a property for $150, they have a mortgage for $125. Just say they're in arrears now for 2 payments or 3 installments on their mortgage. What some people are doing before the banks do, file for the foreclosure and serve their lis pendens and whatever, is they're trying to take out whatever equity they have left in it. Because if the banks foreclose, you can forget about that $25,000 equity they have. So what I'm seeing is that the individual that owns that home for $150 and has a mortgage for $125, maybe behind 2-3 payments, they're like, you know what? If I can suck out $20K out of this property, I'm out of here. So this is where you can step in. If you're educated and you have the right people on your team, is to take over that existing debt, as Marco and Gabe explained. So you take it over, put in the trust, and just pay out the owner. Say, here, you want to walk away with $20K, $15K? Here's your $15K. See you later. So you do 2 things. You're helping him out because, number one, he's taking some equity out. So kudos. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got that if it went into foreclosure. Number 2, he didn't go into foreclosure, which would have been a big backslash to his credit. He would have been screwed for the next 7 years because his credit score would have went down to, from 700 maybe down to 300. And it would have took him so many years to bring it back up. So you're saving him on that front. So it's a kind of a win-win situation where he's taking out some equity. You're taking over the debt. You're buying a property for $20,000, $25,000. Here you go. Let him walk. So I don't know any business where you can, take out $20,000, $25,000, which you don't even have to use your own money for that part of it, and get into a property and still help the other individual. So it's an awesome thing.
Win-win-win.
If you know what you're doing.
And you're stepping into you're stepping into a mortgage that has a very low interest rate. They were giving away mortgages for 1.5%, 2%, because at one point prime was at 0. Well, prime wasn't at 0, but they were lending at 0 plus whatever, a few points, because the banks have to make some money because they don't make enough, obviously. So they have to, they have to pay the bills. They and if in a year from now you're taking over a loan that's matured a little bit and it's not a $150,000 property, it could be a $500,000 property, and the person, they just want 10, 15 grand to walk away. You're buying a really nice property. The property I'm living in, I bought subject to the existing mortgage. I paid 50 grand for my house. That's worth $1 million plus. So it's a way, it's a tool, it's a strategy to get into. And I'm Canadian. Anyone can do this. I do want to say you don't have to be pre-approved or pre-qualified, or the bank doesn't even know you exist. You could put it into your dog Rufus's name if you want to. So it doesn't matter who's taking over that debt, as long as the debt is serviced. You can get into any size property up to 4 units, a mansion. You could buy a $150 million mansion. Give the guy a few bucks or a gal a few bucks, and here's some money, get out of here, and you own the property and everything in it. When I was doing luxury property, that's how I bought most of the houses I've ever lived in, is taking over subject to. So it's a very powerful tool. I highly recommend that you get educated on it and get mentored so you can walk through the conversation that needs to happen, because there's going to be a lot of pushback if you don't position this correctly. You don't say, hi, my name's Marco. I want to put your property into a trust and make your payments. That's not how you're going to start a conversation and get someone to want to do business with you. There's a process that will get you where people will say, please make my payments. I need you to make my payments, because if you don't do it, I'm going to lose my property. Thank you so much for your help. That's how the conversation will end. And in order to get there, there are very specific steps that you have to use and follow in order to get the maximum results. So without getting too heavy, I think we covered it as much as we can. And gentlemen, did you have something else to add, Gabriel?
Well, I was just going to add, how many properties do you think you can acquire if you had that skill? considering what's coming up, and that essentially most properties are going to be worth a little bit less, if not a lot less, than the debt that's there. So you can pretty much get into a property with, you know, nearly no money down, if not no money. I mean, we always do it with no money down, but if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, that's up to you. But how many properties do you think you can get into? That's really the question that you should ask yourself with what's coming up.
The answer is as many as you want. That when I first started doing the business in '99, I did over 100 houses my first year doing exactly that, taking over debt. It was taking candy from a baby. Once you have a specific skill set, you can do it over and over and over again. These are properties in Florida where, you know, it was a flat market at that time, and it was very easy to do. And I bought them all over the place. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely. Looking forward.
Frank, any last words?
Actually, yeah, I just wanted to touch real quickly, like being a foreign national. I'm from Toronto. Gabe's also, and even Marco's. We're all three foreign nationals, but we do business in the States, and Marco lives in the States. But you brought up an interesting thing where most of us, not that we can't get a mortgage down in the States, in a foreign country, but we're not going to get those attractive rates. So that just adds to another advantage on implementing this strategy, is to get into a mortgage that you otherwise wouldn't have qualified, not because of your financial situation, or maybe it even is for your financial situation. You may have not even two dimes to rub together, but doing this method or this strategy just pushes that to the side or avoids all that, where you can get a good rate. It could be a mature mortgage. It could be in the second trimester, and you could do it as a foreign national, which is the genius about it. That's what gravitated me to it. I was like, shit, this is gold, Jerry. This is gold. Well, not Jerry, but Marco. He's the one who introduced it to us.
Yeah, I didn't invent it. It's been around for a while. Something I learned.
Yeah, you didn't invent it, but 99% of the population, let's face it, don't know this shit. It's I don't want to call it wizardry or whatever, but it is things of the elite and people that know how to do it. And
I think wizardry is when you pee on something, but it's
well, I didn't intend that.
Wizardry.
Yes.
Well, yes.
The Frank dictionary.
So well, English is not your first language, so I respect that. It's Italian. So listen, if ignorance is very expensive, and the more tools you have, you can step into a property. So if you don't have credit, don't want to use your credit, or don't care about your credit, you can step into a property subject to the existing financing, learn how to put the right paperwork together so it's impossible for banks to take it back, even if they know that you own it. There's nothing they can do legally. You're protected federally from a federal law that insists that you stay and keep the property as long as you make the payments. So it's a very powerful tool. And of course, the more you learn, the more you earn. And I'm excited to help you and as many people as possible achieve financial independence, so you don't have to do things that you have to do, but do the things that you want to do. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We appreciate you, and I really look forward to the next one. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you, Frank. Have a great day.
If you like this episode of Big Fat Real Estate Checks, then show some love by leaving a comment and a good rating. Also, as a thank you for tuning in today, we've got a special free gift. The journey to passive cash flow for a life starts by finding deals, and it's easier than you think. Simply go to getdealsbytuesday.com, enter your email address, and we'll send you a free quick start course called Deals by Tuesday. Even if it's 11 p.m. Monday night, this course will show you how to find discounted real estate deals by Tuesday. It's that fast and simple. Go to getdealsbytuesday.com and start your journey toward life-changing cash flow today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.